Each evening at this time, Monday through Friday, Rosemary interviews local personalities and others who bring items of interest to this community. Time for Talk is a community betterment service designed to cooperate with our local community betterment program. Tonight, Rosemary takes us by means of portable camera out of our studios and maybe into your neighborhood. And now, it's time for Talk.
Well, we're at the Democrat again. We're at the Daily Dunklin Democrat, and you indicate that you really enjoy when we come up and go through some of these old, and let me tell you, it is really an interesting thing to go through some of these old archives like this. Just look at that. Now, you'll have a lot of news in here. This is 1909, and we found a 1910 that's in much better shape. Now, actually, a 2010 would be in a lot better shape, but you don't want to see that. You want to see this Kennett, Dunklin County, Missouri, January 14th, 1910. And if you can also get this headline up here, Dunklin County has shorter and warmer winters than any other county in Missouri. Now, that may have been true in 1910, but 100 years later, in 2010, we really had a cold one this year, didn't we? So it didn't hold, but maybe over 100 years we can put up with it. But we thought we would turn these pages and see some of the big news here. Stolen and $150 reward for this horse that was stolen from Mr. Lane. One deep bay horse, 10 years old, with the foretop cut off, and it weighs 1,000 pounds, and he'll pay anybody $150 to bring that horse back. Here in 1910, Waterworks defeated. Kennett took but little interest in the special election January the 4th, authorizing the issuance of $40,000 of bonds for Waterworks. 222 votes were cast. 135 were for the bond and 87 against it, and they had to have 148 to make it necessary for the 2/3. And all of the wards are listed. All right, in the little news items, this one, someone has circled this, and I thought it might well be worth reading. Kennett has evidently had an election, and they will have a fine new city hall. The voters have so decided last week. Well, that's all right, but right now, if Kennett had back the money it put into its city hall, it would expend it on the streets and in getting a system of sewers, and it'd be better off. A town under 10,000 in population really has no use for an expensive building for a city hall. One large enough to house the calaboose with a room for police court is about all that's needed. Calaboose meaning jail. All right, now, you know when this was written? This was written in 1910 when Kennett did build the building, the old city hall that now houses the museum. And that's what they're talking about here. Wasted money, they say. It should have gone for sewer and water and all this stuff. They wish they had the money back. Interesting to look back on things like that. But let's see what else made big news as we turn these pages, and sometimes you have to turn the page, you have to help it with 2 or 3 hands because it's just about to go. It's just about to go. Now, usually only the politicians, there's T.J. Douglas and Hardy Merritt, if they're running for office, and I suppose they're getting ready, this is January, and they're getting ready for the April elections. So let's see when we can find a whole page to turn. It's interesting as I turn these pages, look at the little headline that's always in here. It is admitted that Kennett has the best schools of any town in southeast Missouri. I don't know who has admitted that besides Kennett. It sounds strangely like there would be a prejudice there. All right, we're still in January. We're 1910. Dunklin County has never had a drought nor a crop failure in its 70 years history. Never a drought or a crop failure. And you know what's big news? Drainage. 1910, do you know what? We were a swamp with just some sand ridges and some high dobs. There was Johnson Island and 2 Mile Island and 10 Mile Island. And Lewis Houck, who was a great railroad man, who was only interested in coming in and getting his railroads in to haul the timber out. Lewis Houck discusses engineers Kochitsky figures and plans. Now you remember, we did an earlier show about a man that came in here and walked this whole area of Dunklin County to talk to farmers about the possibility of getting their land drained. Now, one of the big obstacles to that was Lewis Houck. He did not want to pay for his land to be drained because he had no interest in the farmland. He was only interested in the timber, and I have read that he was one of the greatest obstacles for the fact this land could be drained. There seemed to be some doubt as to Mr. Kochitsky's expertise. Listen to what they say here. Mr. Kochitsky has been connected with the drainage work in this section for over 20 years, and no doubt ought to have a great deal of experience, but as far as I know, I regret to say that his work has been far from fruitful. I don't know. This is Mr. Houck's article himself. He has written this article. All right, I had not seen any of these things. I had only read the history of how he dragged his feet to have any of this land drained. His work has been far from fruitful or beneficial. Some 18 years ago, as chief engineer, he designed the work of draining the Little River Basin and the ditch down this channel from Morehouse to the Pemiscot line. The work was started, and it's all negative. This whole article is negative. So Mr. Houck is still dragging his feet about helping with the drainage because he owns so much of the land. Mr. Joe Jacobson was in business in Cardwell, in clothing, ready-to-wear garments, and he says, big bargain sale, I'm quitting Cardwell. I have decided to seek a new location, all prices marked low, and of course right across over here were mules, mules, mules. But Cardwell was a boom town in 1910. It had the largest box mill. Of course, the lumber was there for the taking. And at that point, Cardwell had a population of 2,000. And when I grew up in Cardwell, it was 900. And there was not any industry there at all. You want to see some farm implements? Look at this. Oh, these people with the big tractors now just eat your heart out. What you could buy some of these things, and if you had 40 acres and a mule to hook up to any of these things, you could be in business, and satisfaction is guaranteed. Now, I understand that Riggs was in business, E.A. Baldwin Drug Company. Now, it says a successor to the Harrison Drug Company on the west side of the square in Kennett. Now, I don't know where that could be. I don't know if that's before the old Blakemore drug or not. Well, yes, but it was in the same location, do you think? Baldwin Drug Company. Now, look up here. The J.H. Dunmire Drug Company. It's the Rexall store, and it's on the south side of the square in Tatum Block. And so I remember there was a Dr. Baldwin and a Dr. Dunmire. Now, J.H. Dunmire was Dr. Dunmire, the physician's father, and he was a pharmacist at this time, evidently. So just a couple of drugstores really vying for business here. Eggs for hatching. And this is in the old Lentz Furniture Company store, and Buff Orpingtons, which I have heard of. Your mom raised Buff Orpingtons. $1.25 for 15 chickens. And Houdan's $2 for 15. Fine stock, eggs carefully selected. Now this title intrigued us, Dog Walk Lands, and it's a Blakemore Lasswell Land Company. And it says only about 7,000 acres of this land is left. We've sold during the last 12 months 6,000 acres of land. And it has sold at $60 an acre. So if you could bring your money and go back to 1910, you could really be a land baron. Look here at the headlines. Dunklin County lands that today sell for $60 an acre will bring $200 in 5 years. Oh, and in 100 years it'll bring $2,000 an acre. Now you notice at this stage there are really no photographs. Nobody's taking a camera and going out into the woods and making pictures of anything because it wasn't possible. But the politicians all have their photo that they can submit, and somehow it's a difficult thing to do to get a picture made. Let's keep going. Kennett Store Company, and it's evidently catering to the middle-aged men, but I want you to look at the proportions of this drawing. His head is very small, but boy, the suit is big, and he has on spats over his shoes, and he's smoking a cigar and got a derby hat on. He's a very prosperous gentleman, and all you have to do is go to Kennett Store Company and you can get this suit. Now, it doesn't say a price, but we especially ask the attention of Dunklin County's prosperous farmers to come in and buy a suit. N.H. Summit of Buffalo Township, that's Cardwell. N.H. Summit, the grandfather of people I know, Democratic candidate for county judge in the 2nd District. And for Representative J.E. Thomas of Cardwell as a candidate for, so Cardwell, the area of Cardwell, really into a judge and a representative. We've interviewed Hezzy Heifel some years back, I don't remember how many, but here someone had marked special things on this paper, and one of them was Hezekiah Heifel of Paragould came up from Hornersville Wednesday night with a party to attend the Idle Hour dance, making the trip in his new automobile. Now we wonder if that's the Hezzy Heifel we knew or not. 1910. We're at April 29th, 1910. Coldest April day. Vast damage to crops and fruits throughout the county. On Sunday, it was a record day for the oldest inhabitant. Snow fell all over the Mississippi Valley, the Missouri River Valley, and the Ohio Valley. It was the 2nd anniversary of Dr. Cook's discovery of the North Pole. So we are really going back. Delicate garden vegetables showed no damage from snow or frost on Monday, but the cold was particularly penetrating, and we all got back into winter clothes and hugged hot stoves closer, and more closely than we did in January when the mercury was at 0. In the absence of a better theory, we will give it out that the dust raised by the tail of Halley's Comet got between the Earth and the Sun and cut off the heat we were entitled to in April. Now see, there's always an explanation for a comet doing something, or well, no telling what. And I like this. I've been using gold medal flour. I didn't realize it was 100 years old. Gold medal flour, best that money can buy. It is good. I don't know that it's any better than a lot of other things, but okay. This is still 1910. The smoothest invention that has been sprung on Kennett is at the Kennett Store Company and is the suggestion of the manager, C.F. Blaumbach. And he was aided by a traveling man. He probably was a traveling salesman who was put up at the electric company. It's an apparatus to shut off the electric lights at any time desired and cut down on the cost of the little watts going around. Well, all right. We need one of those at our house. A lot of little watts are going around. By June 8th, 1910, Dunklin County has no $10 farmland left. Its cultivated land sells for $40 to $125 per acre. I don't know who had the 120. That's not the figure I've heard for 1910. But $40 an acre, but no more $10 farmland.